of restriction. And so we've been told that these are dangerous medicines, that they have no medicinal value, that they can be addictive, and the psychedelics are put in with the same category as truly scary drugs. And so we've been lied to about these things because we know from archaeological data and research that these plant medicines have been used by indigenous cultures for thousands and thousands of years, maybe since time immemorial. And so these are beneficial plants, not plants that should be avoided. And but because of this ban, we haven't been able to do research until I think the research really started up in earnest about 5 years ago. And now we're seeing that psychedelic research is being done in more than 100 universities across the globe. And all this new information is coming out, which I guess is a good thing of it being banned, although I wish we had this information 40 years ago rather than now. We would have saved a lot of lives.
So if you're just joining us today, we are with Dr. Randall Hansen, PhD, talking about plant medicine and the destigmatization of psychedelics in mental health. Very special Goldfinger report. So plant medicine, what is it and how can it help to heal humanity?
Plant medicines are obviously any plants that grow naturally. A lot of times we've called them weeds in certain places because we're so disconnected from nature. But the main plant medicines we talk about are the psychedelic plant medicines, although I will have to say I am also a very big supporter of cannabis because that is also a plant medicine, and it does have some psychoactive properties, some strains do, and it has amazing beneficial elements as well that we're just discovering. But the main plant medicines are psilocybin, which is what people typically call or know as magic mushrooms. They grow all over the world and are probably the most accessible plant medicine. There's ayahuasca, which is actually a tea or a brew that's done with two different elements, the root of one plant and the leaf of another, and produces a very powerful medicine. Mescaline is a psychedelic that's found in various cacti around the world, and most commonly in the peyote or the San Pedro or cacti. And then ibogaine, which is a plant that grows in South Africa, or Africa mainly, and is maybe the gnarliest or the most powerful psychedelic, but we are seeing amazing results with addiction, total recovery through ibogaine. The person addicted one day, the next day that addiction is completely gone. Don't ask me how that happens because we're still trying to discover that, but it is absolutely amazing. To me, that's maybe the most powerful case study of psychedelics and plant medicine. And then there's some other psychedelics that are sort of based on plants, but now have been synthesized, like LSD, which comes from a fungus on the wheat and rye plant, and has now been synthesized, and maybe has the LSD maybe has the worst negative connotation in terms of the slandering of it from the Timothy Leary days of psychedelics.
Yes. And I can testify as a person that healed from these plant medicines because I had gone to therapy for years, and maybe it's a nice thing that I had gone to so many different modalities of therapy,
Yep.
psychoanalysis, everything like that. And then to get into the psychedelics as I did healed me in such a way that talk therapy couldn't even come near.
Yeah, I've heard that story so many times, Todd, and it just rings true. Partly because, and I'm not trying to downplay talk therapy. I think it's wonderful. I think the big trend we're going to see going forward once psychedelics get approved by the FDA and or decriminalized is that a lot of therapists are very interested in using psychedelics as part of their practice because talk therapy is great, but if you don't know the trauma or you just don't want to talk about it, you control it. The patient says, I'm not in the mood to talk about that today. And the therapist is, okay, well, we'll talk about it next time, and then next time, and next time. With the plant medicine, with psychedelics, the psychedelics say, no, we're talking about this today, and you're facing this today, and you're not going to go away. And it's not in a scary way, it's in a beautiful way, because it opens your mind to finally addressing it and seeing it. You know, sometimes that trauma is so buried deep within us that we don't even want to look at it. You know, it's like not in therapy, not anywhere. It's just too dangerous or too scary or too guilt or shameful, all these emotions that we carry about trauma. But the psychedelics say, no, no, let's invite you in, let's see it. And you see this trauma as sort of we call it the observer mode or third person, where you see it and you're not re-traumatized by it, but you're able to understand it better, process it better, and then kind of bring it back into your whole person. Because the other big thing we've discovered with this health crisis we're in, and by the way, we are in a major health crisis, mental health, physical health, everything.
Right. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, we need to do this. You know, we're just seeing that these plant medicines are a true way to reconnect with ourselves, because so many of us are disconnected from our bodies, and that's why we have these health issues. You know, we're sort of living two lives within one body, or maybe more than two lives, and we need to find a way to integrate that. And psychedelics are probably the strongest or best way to or the fastest. I'm trying to think the right word there, but the
Most
clearest
efficient.
way to.
Yeah.
But
Also most efficient.
yes, efficient. Thank you. That's a good word. Yeah.
In my experience, I know that I myself did some risky things. You know, I tried some things that, but it worked. So I'm just praying that the FDA will regulate these things and it will come down the pike very soon
Yeah.
to heal a lot of people. And so what I want to talk to you about today, especially, is nature as a healing modality.
Nature. Yeah. I just finished a new project, and I looked at 6 healing modalities. And for me, nature is probably the most powerful modality for me. We know from, again, it's not new knowledge really, but we've just been so disconnected from it. We know the Japanese have been using nature as a healing modality for centuries. They call it forest bathing. And forest bathing is simply going into a natural setting. It doesn't have to be the forest. It could be your local park. It could be your backyard. It could be your garden. And just sitting there, and it's almost like, I call it nature mindfulness, because you sit there and you simply breathe. You think about what you're smelling, the pine needles or what's blowing in the wind, and you listen for the birds or animals, and you are just sort of immersing yourself in that calming environment. And that's sort of the anecdotal side or the art side of nature. But then the science side of it shows that nature has this calming effect on the brain. And there are some really, really interesting studies with children with attention deficit, that they spend a half hour in nature before class. They come back to class and their focus is so much stronger without medication, just nature as a medication. And then the other cool thing about the science is there are these chemicals that trees and plants give off to protect themselves. They're called phytoncides. And these chemicals, when we breathe them in, it actually helps boost what we call our natural killing cells, that are cancer killing cells. And so by being in nature, breathing these phytoncides, we're actually strengthening our immune system at the same time. So nature has multiple benefits for healing and for health.
Wonderful. Very good. So one of the questions, how long do people have to wait until these new modalities come down the pipeline?
Oh, that's a good one. The good news, I guess, is we're expecting MDMA, which is not a plant medicine, but it is a psychedelic, and it is uh, also just
To treat
FYI.
PTSD. Oh,
What's that?
sorry. To treat the
Good.
PTSD.
Yes, it's been it's been shown to have extremely effective for PTSD. Yes. And some people might know MDMA as it's not the same substance, but it's similar. The party drug ecstasy. And so what MDMA does in the pure form, again with intention, not going to a rave or something like that, but uh, MAPS, which is one of the big nonprofits in the psychedelic space, has done all 3 clinical trials now that need to be done for FDA approval, and they're hoping in early 2024, so in a couple months, that the FDA will approve this for therapeutic use, which means that therapists could now start prescribing this as part of their practice. Psilocybin, Compass, Small Pharmaceutical, and a couple others they're I think in phase 2 right now. So psilocybin, they're talking maybe 2025, or 26. And then the ones beyond that are not even that far along. So mescaline or ibogaine, ayahuasca are further down the road, and so it's going to be a long haul in terms of getting these approved for therapeutic use. At the same time, there are decrim movements going on all across the country. Oregon and Colorado are probably the 2 biggest states for that. Oregon has just initiated finally their process of approving people as facilitators for some of these plant medicines, and so we're going to see a little more access in those states. And I don't know if we're going to see sort of medical tourism in that sense of people going to Oregon for a legal journey. Right now, people, if they want a psychedelic experience, either have to go out of the country to places where it is legal, or they have to go to an underground center, or they can go through a clinical trial if there's one near them that fits their criteria. But it's just a shame that there's still such limited access to these plant medicines.
That's right. And what are some of the modalities that could be implemented to help heal the world?
Well, definitely psychedelics. There's a joke that people say, if we just put psychedelics in the water system of all government leaders, we would have, peace around the world, which, we've never had. And of course, you can't do that because it's not people have to knowingly take the psychedelics. But
Also, that leads me to another question,
yeah,
which is,
yeah.
are psychedelics for everyone?
Matt Zeman has a great book with that title, Psychedelics for Everyone, but they're not for everyone. So
Right.
the psychedelics have the potential for everyone, but there are going to be some people that are just too ingrained with the stigma, all these lies, the dare, the just say no, that are just too afraid to do it. And that's fine. There are other healing modalities, and you don't want to go into a psychedelic experience being scared about what's going to happen. But as we talked about, nature is a great modality. We're so disconnected from nature. Even in schools, there used to be greenhouses and gardening classes in high schools, middle schools, and so many of them are now boarded up. And the school lunches used to have some of the fresh veggies from the school greenhouse, and now they have horrible pizza and chicken nuggets and gross stuff. So nature's another one. Somatics, it's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score, and we keep a lot of trauma in our bodies. And so just being able to release the trauma through massage, through dance, through actual somatic exercises, through energy healing, there's so many of these aspects of that. Another modality is spirituality. I'm not talking about organized religion. I'm talking about actually just having a sense that there's a greater something in this world,
Connection.
a connection. Yeah. And the greatest example of that is one of the veterans I talked to after a psychedelic healing. He said, if I had done psychedelics before I joined the military, I never would have joined the military, because I realized why would I want to kill my brother? We're all connected. We're all brothers, sisters. We're all part of this human experience. And yet, here we are, and we see it today, around the world, people killing each other. And when we have this healing, we realize, and that's partly why psychedelics were banned back in the 70s, because President Nixon was in the middle of Vietnam War, and people were doing psychedelics and saying, make love, not war. And that was too scary. No, we need to have a military. And we don't. So yeah, it just changes your mindset completely when you're healed.
And what was the turning point for you? When did you realize that something needed to be done in the field of psychedelic medicine?
I think, for me right now, I feel, it's going to sound odd to some people, but I feel like I am on a divine mission. I didn't know that until I found my healing. Before that, I was just so, focused on how can I improve? How can I be better? How can I kind of reconnect with myself? You think about when we're children and all the kind of zany stuff we do. I mean, I had an imaginary friend. I climbed trees. In fact, that's probably why nature was already calling to me then as a healing modality. I didn't know it, but and then we lose that because we have to go to school, we have to get a job, we have to be a career, we have to get married or have a family, and mortgage and all these things, and we lose that connection to the inner child. And that's one of the aspects of healing too, is we kind of find some of that childhood joy that we have been so separated from. So for me, it was nature first. Then I also actually first was healing myself through wellness, because I was the typical junk food, fried food, all those things. And that was sort of the first little piece of healing for me, was heal your body. And so that became a process of understanding, how all these labels, all the food in supermarkets are manipulated. And so that was the beginning of the journey. And the psychedelics were sort of the end of my journey for me. And that's where it came out. In fact, my first book, Triumph Over Trauma, it wasn't my idea. It was actually from the end of an LSD journey, where I was just sitting there, and I can't explain how, why, whatever, but sometimes we call this a digital download. But I just got this force, this something that said, you need to write this book. It's not going to be your book. It's a book about storytellers telling their stories of healing through psychedelics. And the final outline of this book is about 90% of what I got from that LSD experience. And that's what psychedelics do. They just, once you heal, you just feel this need to reach out your hand and help others heal, because it just is such a peaceful place. And I guess I know authentic is kind of overused, but I don't know another word for that. Just your authentic self. Like, you finally say, oh man, I fit in my body, I fit in my soul, I fit in my heart. And that's healing. And so, but then once you have that, you just want to go and say, yes, please, I want to help you. I want to help you.
Absolutely. The altruism
Yeah.
that comes out, as opposed to the opposite of that, which would be cynicism.
Yeah. Yeah. Or narcissism. It's
Or
all about
narcissism,
me.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
essentially, with plant medicine, narcissism, PTSD, OCD, depression, uh, different conditions like this could be essentially cured.
Yeah. Yes. And thank you. Excellent question, because that's the big difference too. So many people are on pharmaceutical meds that basically just suppress the symptoms. They do nothing for healing. The vast majority, their blood pressure is just controlling your blood pressure. It's not fixing the condition that's causing the high blood pressure. Antidepressants are just managing the symptoms, they're not getting to the root cause. And the one thing that psychedelics do, and you're right, we're seeing this for so many different things, and not just mental health conditions, but we're seeing it for things like uh, uh, migraines and cluster headaches and pain. So we're looking at other chronic illnesses, both physical and mental. And what the psychedelics do, though, is they help the person actually heal. So you're not taking a psychedelic every day for the rest of your life like you are with an antidepressant or with an anti-anxiety or with a high blood pressure pill or a cholesterol pill. And it's amazing to see how many people are on multiple medications right now, multiple prescriptions. And again, that's one fantastic aspect of a healing journey, is getting off those medications.
Right, for the individual, because essentially it seems that these things are to profitize over the people instead of doing what's good for them.
Yep.
It's well, it's a travesty.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, Big Pharma is just looking at their bottom line and saying, and that's the one fear we have in psychedelics, is that if once these medicines get FDA approval, we're sort of afraid of Big Pharma swooping in and saying, "Oh, well, here's more ways we can make money." So that's one of the areas we're all kind of like trying to figure out how to protect this industry, because Big Pharma is most definitely profits over people for sure.
and yeah, right. The question before was, do you believe that psychedelics are for everyone? And just
Oh
to
yeah,
say that,
yes,
you know, some people are chosen.
yes. Here's a good point too. So one thing I didn't mention on that too, that we talked a little bit beforehand. So there are some conditions where psychedelics might not be for you, especially physical conditions. The psychedelics all psychedelics tend to raise blood pressure and heartbeat a little bit. Ibogaine is the most serious one. In fact, the best Ibogaine clinics have doctors on staff. They have people hooked up to a blood pressure monitor, and so they are constantly watching that. With something like psilocybin, it's not as big an issue. But again, if you have any kind of heart or blood pressure thing, you should be talking to your doctor about that and getting that medical advice. And then there are certain mental conditions that we want to be a little wary of, and it's more of a case by case basis. And so again, that's talking with your psychotherapist or a doctor about that and whether it fits in. But again, the vast majority of people are physically and mentally able to take most psychedelics, especially, like I said, psilocybin, which is probably the most gentle of all the psychedelics. The other thing, what was the other part of that question about for everybody?
Is that basically, for example, like magic mushrooms, like what they can do, but we must wait until,
Oh yes,
yeah.
yeah. So we talk about, and this sounds a little woo-woo to people, but the medicines typically call us, and it might be that someone watching this right now is going to be called to it, and that's what happens. It's someone sees it on a news program, or they read a magazine, or their friend happens to come back from Costa Rica and say, "Oh my God, I just had the most amazing experience." And so, and to me, that's a sign when you get a couple of these things, all of a sudden, whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca or whatever is in your space somehow. That's probably a good sign that maybe you should do some investigating and see if they are right for you. The flip side of that is people that chase the medicine.
Mm.
And that's when people are like, "Oh, I need this healing. I need this healing." It's like, okay, slow down, do the research and see, make sure that's right for you. Don't chase it. Let the medicine come to you in that sense. And so that's an important aspect of this process too. And the research is extremely important, because all these medicines have different attributes, different lengths of time. Um, Psilocybin journey is typically 4 to 5 hours, and an ibogaine is something like 24 to 36 hours. So there's a big difference between those experiences. So research is extremely important for anyone that's curious about psychedelics and plant medicine.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to say also is that it can treat these conditions that seemed untreatable.
Yeah, yeah. I love a person who was talking to me about OCD, and I had two stories. One that's cured OCD through microdosing, and one who did it through a macrodose. And the one person told me it was like she was on a hamster wheel every day, just spinning that wheel, and she couldn't figure out how to get off it because the thought was so ingrained in her brain. It was like it had made this deep groove, and so anytime she had a moment, the brain went, her thoughts went right to that groove, and she was back on that hamster wheel. Had a psychedelic experience, gone, because that the geeky part about psychedelics. So we have the healing component, which is amazing, but we have this other component, which is the neuroplasticity. And we thought, for decades that the brain stopped growing basically in your 20s. And yes, you could do some exercises to keep the brain active, crossword puzzles and things like that, brain teasers. But we're seeing that psychedelics do two really fantastic things. One, what happens is the psychedelic calms our default mode network, which is, you could call our ego if you want, or the voice in our head that we hear the most often. So it calms it down, quiets it down, so it allows new connections, parts of our brains that haven't talked to each other in decades, years, are now be able to talk to each other. And the other cool thing it does is and I don't know how it does this again, but like with OCD, it finds that defective connection, that bad groove, and it snaps it. Nope, that's no longer needed. And so when they come out of this journey, it's gone. And it's just, I mean, again, it's so phenomenal. I don't want to call it, we're very cautious about calling these magic medicines or magic pills, because so much of big pharma calls their stuff magic pills. But they have the power to do these things if we do it with intention, if we do it in
With
the right
purpose.
setting, and then with integration. What were you going to say?
With purpose.
With purpose, yes, exactly.
Well, Dr. Randall Hansen, it has been absolutely wonderful to have you on the program, the Goldfinger Report. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the public, the audience, in the next few minutes?
I just want to say, a lot of people would say, I don't have any trauma. I don't feel trauma. So I say, well, ask yourself a few questions. And I have a little self-assessment on my website, but it's just questions like, do you feel comfortable with yourself? I have a good person who talked about, he hated being by himself. He would go out to bars every night just to be with people because he didn't want to be alone with himself. That's an extreme case, but so are you comfortable with yourself? Are you feeling you're living your best life? Do you have self-love? Do you accept love from others? Um, and so these are just a couple little things you'd be thinking about. And if you're saying, well, no, I don't feel quite right, or I'm not happy. You don't have to be happy every day. No one's necessarily happy every day, but being healed means you do have joy in your life. You do have some peace. You have love, especially. And so if you're lacking some of these things, there's probably some trauma in your background. And my belief is that we all have trauma. There's a spectrum, no comparison, but there's a spectrum from, the trauma we all know about, war trauma, abuse, things like that, to what I call a million little paper cuts that add up to something larger. And then there's also the lack of love. A lot of stories about just somehow you expected love as a child and you didn't get the love you wanted, and so there's that trauma from that. So I just want everyone to seek healing, because when you seek healing and go on that healing journey, everything changes. Your life changes, your outlook changes, you see things differently. you can have gratitude. I worry sometimes about positive psychology that says, be positive, be good today. But if you're in a deep, dark place, that almost seems like pushing me further down because like I don't have a way to be positive. But through healing, you can get to that spot. And that's all I want. I have a lot of free resources on LinkedIn and my website, so you don't have to buy any of my books to get this. I just want you to be on a healing journey because I just want everyone to live their best life, and that's my goal.
God bless you.
Thank you. And I just
Thank,
appreciate people like you that allow me to share that message. So thank you, Todd.
thank you so much. Thank you. So hopefully these modalities will be coming down the pike very, very soon. And we'll see you again soon on Millennium News TV. Thank you so much for being with us. Peace.
Mhm. Yeah.